my tummy ache survivor shirt and I have a tummy ache survivor in my lap. I wasn't going to go live and then he came into my lap and I was like, well, I guess I will. So we'll give a little update on the little man because he's chilling. I don't know if you can hear him purring, but he do be purring. I haven't weighed Lint recently, but I want to soon. I think I'm just going to wait until he's at the vet next because he's going to be going into the vet for his little deballing next week. And then we'll also just be getting like rechecked and weighed again. And I used to weigh him way more regularly because he wasn't keeping weight on. So it was more necessary. Now that he's like clearly gaining weight and is like visibly more healthy, we don't need to weigh him quite as much. And like we've really held off on neutering him because he was so thin for so long that it would just be like really dangerous to put him under. And also he was like so underdeveloped from just like not eating that he didn't really have any balls to take off initially. So anyways, he's going in next week. Him and Phoebe actually have their surgeries on the same day. Phoebe's my dog who's getting, she's right here if you can kind of see her bum. She's getting her toe amputated, so they'll be getting dropped off together in the morning next week and getting twin surgeries, except Lint is not getting a toe amputated. He'll be getting his balls amputated. But I'm just so glad Lint's okay because I think that we were kind of hitting a point where he was so malnourished that like long term we would have started to see a lot more effects coming through if we didn't figure, oh, what? Yeah, she just bumped something. If we didn't start to make sure he was actually retaining his nutrients, I think that he was like very likely not gonna survive if he didn't get his diagnosis and like subsequent treatment. So I'm really glad that like I pushed for it. Honestly, it was like a lot of stuff to deal with all at once because like his ongoing health issues were basically happening concurrently with like my dad being in the hospital and stuff. So it was a lot to deal with, and like a lot of it I was trying to manage from out of province when I was with my dad in the hospital. So it was a lot, but I'm glad that we got it done and that he's actually thriving now because he's just behaving so differently. But like I would be lying to if I didn't say that it's been a lot. Like I've been really tired and I've kind of been fluctuating between feeling really guilty for how tired I am and not wanting to do anything and not like perpetually progressing and like kind of beating myself up over that and feeling guilty. But at the same time, like I'm trying to just remind myself that like this year has been a lot. Like I've been through a lot this year and that like it's okay to rest and that I don't always need to be like putting on a brave face and like surging forward so as to not like inconvenience anyone else because that's not what healing is about. We can't always be perpetually productive. And that's really been like a lesson that I can feel being stressed in this timeline of my life is to let go of that need to constantly be productive and like worrying about not doing enough and like to stop internalizing like other people perpetuating that toxicity because it does happen a lot online. And like one thing that I've also been trying to let go of is like and like it's kind of been for a while, like when you're on social media and you share a lot of your life, like naturally it does open you up to criticism and it opens you up to people who will make judgments and assumptions about you and your life. And there's a lot of people online who try to perpetuate this narrative, oh, well, you sign up for that with being online. And it's just something that like I vehemently disagree with. Like you don't sign up to be bullied just by existing online. The same social graces apply. You're just held less accountable online typically, but like you're just as much of an asshole if you run around bullying people online as you would be if it's in person. And I think the caveat there is that there's people who will leverage the term bullying to try to suggest that people should never be held accountable for their behavior, when really it's not bullying, it's criticism of behavior. But then actual bullying is like name calling, degrading, trying to make people feel like shit, and just saying like nasty things about them. And that does happen quite a bit online. Like even in the midst of like my grief journey, it's been something that I've been honestly kind of surprised about, because like even when you're like a really angry person, like I just can't imagine going out of my way to choose the person to be the recipient of that anger, like someone that has just lost a parent. Like I can't imagine, even if you're going to justify grieving, being shitty online because it's the internet. I find it really odd to have people who are already navigating loss be the recipient for that. But what I have noticed in being more open about that grief and like sharing videos of me crying is that it triggers people who have clearly been taught to feel shame for crying. And that makes me deeply sad, because I think a lot of the people who end up being the most enraged by my content are people who have been raised in punitive lifestyles where they've been made to feel ashamed for feeling. Um, and for navigating like regular human emotions. And the same thing kind of applies. He is leaving. So now the title of this live is a little bit of a lie, except he's on my shirt. Whoa, what happened to this shirt though? I spilled on it. Okay, cool. Messy. But like I think that a lot of people who are dealing with shame with how they've been raised or what they've been made to feel about certain things, they end up getting triggered by people expressing behaviors that they've been taught are weak or shameful. And crying is a big one. So when you cry and it is public, people are like, well, why would you share this publicly? It's supposed to be private and like behind closed doors. But like my perspective on life, like whether it's crying or like being happy, like it's not any more personal for me to share my wins than it is for my losses. They're both equally components of my life. So for me, like if I got everything I've ever possibly wanted tomorrow and I were to go online and be like, oh my God, guys, I bought a farm. Like this is so exciting. Like that would be socially acceptable to share on social media and people would be excited about that because it's joyful. On the flip side, when you have your foundation rocked and you are going through immense loss, like losing a parent, and you're naturally sad about that and you want to share it online, people then view that as too personal because it's a more uncomfortable emotion to witness than happiness is. And the issue is that that stems in the person witnessing it and feeling uncomfortable and then making their discomfort someone else's problem. And that's something that I just like fundamentally do not agree with, taking on that responsibility of having someone else's emotions and feelings be my problem, because at its core, like our society should not be so averse to sadness, because it basically creates this narrative where it's only okay to show up in public if you are winning. It's only okay to take up space if what you are experiencing is joyful and about like what people's goals are. But then in the midst of doing that, what we create is a world where people have to be alone, where they have to fundamentally feel alone when they're navigating the hardships that are oftentimes part of building the foundation to later get to your wins. And then when you do achieve those wins, if you don't talk about any of the hardships, then you're creating this narrative where people think that you've lived this perfect life and that you've achieved those things without hardship, which then makes people who are going through hardship feel even more alone and like they can never get to the point of achieving those wins. And that's just not the reality of what my life is. Like I posted a video recently where I talked a little bit more about the trauma that I've gone through while I've been developing this channel. And I am going to talk more about that because I think it's important, because people who followed me on this channel, like I started this channel in December 2015. So like most of the toughest years of my life have been played out while I've been producing content on this channel. And hello to people who just joined. Um, and how I created videos, how I responded to comments, the type of person that I was very heavily influenced by the trauma that I was going through. There's no way around that fact. Like my behavior was influenced by the struggles that I was going on. And I wasn't really sharing those struggles because I was in the midst of them. I didn't see a way out. I didn't see a way to separate myself from things that I was having to deal with on a daily basis. And there was no end in sight at that point. So talking about it at that point, in the way that I'm more comfortable doing now, would open me up to a lot of judgment and a lot of hate. and a lot of commentary on things, because there was a few times where I would talk about it and then people would be trying to guess who in my life certain aspects of trauma were applying to, and would just say like really nasty, derogatory things, oftentimes about addiction in specific. And it was just cruel. And I didn't want to subject myself or anyone else to that when we were in the middle of that discomfort of navigating those traumas. So I really didn't get to share much about that trauma. I was just much more emotionally volatile and struggling a lot more, and didn't really have people knowing why. Which they're not entitled to knowing why, but I think it is something to note that when people are feeling certain ways and they're behaving certain ways, all behavior has an underlying motivation. So there's probably something going on in that person's life. And this isn't to say that it justifies their behavior, because if someone is going out of their way to make everyone else in the world the target of cruelty because they are struggling, that's not an okay of dealing with that, an okay way of dealing with that struggle, but it does explain where it's coming from. So like even people who hate me and hate my channel and are being like very vitriolic in their behavior, that's often where I go to, where it's like, okay, I don't know what it is, but there is clearly something going on in their life that is making this happen. And they are not happy, because if they were happy and settled in their life, they do not tend to respond that way. And the same applied to like my channel in the past. So I think it's an important thing to do, is to share that part of the struggle, because part of like my struggle is part of who I've become and why I have a lot of the views that I do. And I also think it's an important part where if there's people watching my content and they're going, wow, she's living a life I wish I had, like she's so lucky. Like I think the context of knowing where I came from is important, because especially with horses, people look at people who own horses and they go, they're all rich, they're all incredibly affluent and privileged. And they don't know that my family went bankrupt when I was a kid because my uncle embezzled all of our money. And that was like one of the a key trauma in my childhood that then later was like a setting event for why I didn't get to see my dad as much, why a lot of the connections with like his family became estranged, because his one of his brothers was the uncle that took all of her money, and it created strain across the entire family and fractured relationships and whatnot. So, and it also made it so that I couldn't, like my mom couldn't afford to fly us out to go see him, because we had no fucking money. So, and then there's also the aspect of me when I was building my business and trying to free myself from all of these traumas and struggles. I was working 6 days a week galloping race horses, and I also had client horses. So I was averaging riding like 15 to 20 horses a day between the years of 2016 and like 2020. And I didn't have anyone else working for me. So leaving my business would mean going without pay on top of having to pay to go visit my dad. So that was one of the things on the video that I posted about him recently, where I said I hadn't seen, the last time I saw him was in summer 2024. And prior to that, I hadn't seen him in a decade since my high school graduation. And it was because of stuff like that. It was because we had no money. It was because he couldn't afford to fly out. Like him flying out is harder because he's disabled. And I know I'm using present tense right now, but we're just going to ignore that. Still getting used to it. And it was hard. So he was also going through a lot too. So he had like some health stuff that was going on, and it just couldn't happen because of the struggles and parameters set by my business, and like not feeling able to leave. And then also like feeling suffocated by the trauma that I was going through, and like all of the stuff that was happening, like getting through each fucking day where I was already hard enough. And then the thought, like the more years that passed, the harder it became. Because it's like, okay, now I haven't seen any of these people in like 5+ years. And flying out to go see my dad means one, going and seeing all of these people that I haven't seen in a while. And like most of them are great. But then there's that uncle that embezzled all of her money, right? Worrying about having to see my uncle, and then also thinking about what I would even say to him if I were to see him in person again. Which I hope I do one day, because I would love to have some words with that fucking guy. And honestly, just like big dick him and be like, hey, I built my business. I didn't need to embezzle $5 million from people who trusted me to do it, you piece of shit. I'm a better business person than you. That's probably what I would want to say, because what bothers men most is women outperforming them. So, but there's all these things that like led to not being able to see him. And without sharing those things, like out of context, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, you hadn't even seen your dad in 10 years. Get over him. Like, get over it. Like, you barely fucking knew him and he's dead now. Like, you're probably not even that sad." And they come from a place of judgment. What they don't see is all of those factors surrounding why that was even a thing. And like there were other decisions that could have been made at the time, but like the key thing is that when you're experiencing trauma, you're so overwhelmed and you're in such a constant fight or flight response that you don't see all the options available, and that it just feels so overwhelming to even make moves and get yourself out of that state. Um, and like, I'm proud of myself for even being able to do what I did, because I could have decided to nuke my entire life and just give up and to not pursue the stuff that I really wanted to do business wise, and to not work with horses, and to go through the perspective of like getting like a real job that's more likely to land me with success. And I didn't do that. I chose to go with the thing that I wanted to do. But the other key is that like undoing a lot of the beliefs that I had about horses. There is like that period between like 2015 and like 2019, 2020-ish, where I was more rigid to changing in a lot of ways, because like there is still shifts happening, but there is things that like I would double down and defend more, because it was like uprooting that part of my belief system when I was already going through so much would mean losing some of the shit that was stabilizing me and keeping me feeling somewhat safe. Um, and that's also really hard to do. So I think that's something where even with like my horse welfare stuff, like I do often phrase things as like, this is how, these are the facts, this is how it is. And like a lot of that comes from like my education from a scientific standpoint. Like when you're writing from a scientific standpoint, you're writing papers, you're not considering emotions, and it's not an attack. You might say things that cause an emotional response in someone, but it's just outlining like, these are the facts, this is how it is. But it can be blunt enough that it really upsets certain people. However, like I think that that is an important way of communicating too, and people having that an emotional reaction to factual information. Again, it comes back to the fact where you are entitled to your emotions, but also it's important to like sit with them and ask yourself why you're having that type of reaction to what someone's saying. And I think that that's an important thing that we should do in navigating with your horsemanship, where if someone is saying something where they actually have like empirical evidence backing what they're saying, and your response is to attack them as a person, it's an important point of reflection to go, why is what this person is saying impacting me so heavily? If I am admittedly saying I do not respect them, I think they're full of shit and they don't know what they're talking about. Because people love saying stuff like that to me. And if it were actually true, if they truly thought I was just full of shit and didn't know anything, it should be a lot easier for them to shrug off the weight of the comments that I make and the reason why they can't when it comes to stuff like turning horses out, and providing species appropriate care, is because deep down they do know there's merit to what I say. If it was just me saying it, it would be way easier to write me off as a person, shrug it off, and move on. But the problem is that those words hold more weight than just me saying them. But attacking the messenger is a way where they can feel in control and try to feel better about their stance to just not take in that information. And I think that with me sharing my own journey and like how my perspectives have changed with my horses, it oftentimes causes more discomfort, because even if I'm purely talking about myself and I'm like, this is how I used to feel, this is what I used to believe, this is what I used to do, and then I go, this is now what I believe, these are the decisions I would now make, and this is how I feel about horses, and here's why. If people are still at any of the stages that I reference about my past self, they're going to feel attacked by me criticizing my past self and by me explaining that aspect of things, because I am holding a mirror up to their part of their journey, even though I'm talking about myself. And I see this happen a lot, because I've said, like, especially on posts where like I've made reference to the fact that like I will not continue to have horses if I was ever in the position where I had to like separate my herd and have them all living individually. That like my choice would be to either find them more suitable homes or move them further away than where I am currently so that they could all live together. Because separating an established bonded herd into individual small paddock turnout, like so many of the boarding facilities where I live, is torture. Like it would be so upsetting to me as a person, like even horse welfare aside, that would be fucking miserable for me, and I don't want to do that. And when I say that, it upsets people who would not make the same decisions for their horses, even though my decisions for my own horses are a deeply personal thing and it has nothing to do with them and the challenges that they face. It's not a judgment on the decisions that they're making. It's talking about how my perspectives have shifted. But it holds a mirror up to where they are in their life. And that oftentimes creates discomfort. And I've noticed that a lot throughout life, where like using myself as an example and pulling up photos of things that I used to do and believe in with horses oftentimes riles people up more than criticizing other trainers and using other people's videos does. And I think it's because I bring up those photos and they see themselves in those photos. They look and they go, I have similar photos with me and my horses, and then it upsets them. But I think it's important. And also, like, I don't want to have to sanitize and basically curate my life to be more palatable to other people. Like the recent video that I posted, which is like a 3 minute short that is just breaking down some of the stuff that I've gone through while I've been building my business and what I've overcome, and just being proud of like where I've gotten to despite that, because it's been hard for a while and I'm going through a hard spot right now, but I'm like trying to remind myself it's been hard before. It's felt uncomfortable before. It's been really challenging before. And like I've made it through to the other side. So like a lot of times when I make those videos, it's for me. It's not just for other people. If it has benefit for other people, then that's a added bonus. But it's for me. It's reminding myself. It's holding myself accountable by sharing certain things, and reminding me of where I've come from. But I got a comment on one. I got a comment on one recently where someone's like, I feel like this is very negative. You should be more positive. And I'm like, sharing shit that has actually happened to me. Like the only way to make that more positive in the eyes of someone else is to like omit certain information and rewrite what actually happened to me. And it's comments like that make me want to share more, because this idea that people who are actively experiencing trauma or who have experienced a lot of trauma and made it out to the other side owe it to anyone to sanitize that experience and make it sound more positive and less upsetting is insane. Like there were a lot of years that if someone's like, oh, like look on the bright side of things, it would have pissed me off because there wasn't a bright side to be seen at certain points. It was really, really difficult and it was a hard place to be. And like I don't intend to sanitize stuff that I actually went through, because the positive part of that is that I've made it through those things. Like I'm no longer actively going through a lot of the trauma that I talk about in that video, and I've built what I have today despite that happening to me. So that is the positive part. But the mere fact that I shared things that happened to me that other people cannot imagine going through was viewed as negative. And they were like, oh, you should be more positive. And I'm like, no, let's not encourage people to be toxically positive, because that ruins positivity. And instead of like having the impact of being more positive, what it's actually doing is just telling people who are going through trauma, like, hey, don't take up space. Hey, actually, your reality is not positive enough for me. And hearing about it is making me uncomfortable. Therefore, you should stop sharing. That's what you're telling people who are going through trauma. And then you have people who suffer in silence. And I've kind of hit the point in life where now when I see things happening where it's like people hear that like someone has taken their own life or something, and they're like, oh my God, I'm this is so sad, lost so soon. I wish there was something that I could have done. Usually there is. And this isn't to say that people need to take blame for random people who choose to do that, but like societally, there is something we could do. We could make it so that people don't feel like a burden for sharing their experience. We could make it safer for people to share the struggles that they're going through. We could normalize crying and being sad and grieving in public and recognize that that is processing emotions. And those are all things that would make it safer for people to have some level of intervention, and support before they make a permanent decision. But the people who often say like, oh, I wish there was something we could do, if you actually look at their actions when we have these systemic things that lead people to be more likely to being severely mentally ill and having struggles and feeling immensely alone, they oftentimes participate in upholding the very aspects of society that make that more likely to happen. So it's kind of it's kind of virtue signaling in a way to be like, oh, I wish there's something that I could do. Meanwhile, you call people like snowflakes for being upset. You support people who are perpetuating divisive rhetoric and disproportionately targeting marginalized people. You support people who are uplifting hateful ideals and like even politically, like depending on who you vote for, you might be supporting people who are removing healthcare or not emphasizing mental health care, or who are wanting to pursue a society that looks more like a prison industrial complex than it does a community mindset that's about actually dealing with what results in crime. So it's like people are devastated when something happens after it happens, and they will perform sadness. But when it comes down to it, a lot of people don't actually want to participate in building the fabric of a society that would actually prevent those things from happening. Because we do have a pretty good idea of what factors contribute to mental illness and also what factors contribute to crime being more likely. And they are not the factors that are being targeted the most by certain governmental powers that are here today doing things. And certainly, like nuking our environment by firing off a bunch of missiles and starting another war is not going to help any of us. Like that's literally the dumbest fucking thing ever. And I am of the mind now that it's like there should be no wars unless we are putting the politicians who start the wars into like a gladiator style arena and having them fight it out. Because like if you don't support your cause enough to risk your own life for it, then no one else should be going to war for you. And if we actually did that, I think that a lot less politicians would be starting these stupid fucking wars that are often more about securing oil and other resources and power and greed than anything else. And they do it under the guise of like protecting their citizens. They don't fucking give a shit about their citizens. So yeah, like let's throw Donald Trump into an arena gladiator style and he can fight someone to the death if he's mad at another country. You know, like he should have to be the one that bears the burden of putting his life at risk to go after the stuff that he thinks is important. And that applies to all politicians. No, I did not hear that they think they know who Banksy is, but yeah, that's disappointing if anyone outs who he is, unless he actually wants to, because that's been like a huge part of his art, is to just be able to be sneaky. And then yeah, on the comment that says being able to emotionally regulate makes you so much better at horsemanship because you can help your horses emotionally regulate. Yes. That's like, honestly, I think that if more horse trainers could emotionally regulate, we wouldn't be seeing all these abusive videos online, because regardless of what any of those people say, if you're losing your shit at your horse to the point where you're chasing them backwards, flicking the rope at them and shaking their head a million times across the entire arena until they like fall over, and yes, I'm referencing a specific video, you're not emotionally regulated. Like, I would say nearly 100% of the people who promote punishment the most are very poor at regulating their own emotions. And if they are good at it, then they're honestly just like a psychopath. Because if you're perfectly regulated and you're still defending beating animals as a primary method of training, then you're just like a bad person. But yeah, the vast majority of these people can't even regulate themselves, yet they're expecting these flight animals to be able to regulate themselves better than they can. And it's very hypocritical. Like, and that's also something I've been struck by a lot of horse people, where they have these expectations for how consistently their horses should behave and what horses should do, but they can't meet any of those expectations themselves. They're so poorly regulated that they can't even bring themselves down enough to like pause for a second and go, how might I have influenced this behavior in my horse? And then they want horses to be perfectly predictable and to never spook at anything and to never respond negatively, no matter what they deprive the horse of in their day-to-day life or how they influence a certain response in training. And it's just insane. And the sad thing is, like, a lot of those people probably grew up with parents that did the same thing to them, where they were basically in charge of regulating their parents, and if they couldn't, that they would be punished for it. And then I think that's what leads them down the path of being the very type of person who promotes that towards animals, and who has this idea of like being a good citizen, being about being perfectly obedient. And like, that's the other thing with like just animals in general, because I posted a short recently where I say that like this, like, it was a call out post for people who don't let their dogs sniff on walks. And like most of the comment section got what I was talking about, but then there's people who are like, oh well, like they need to listen, like training your dogs is important. They have such a black and white perspective that it's like, you know, like you can ask your dog to heel for like portions of the walk, and then you can break the heel and let them sniff and like use that as a reinforcer too, where you like they don't need to be locked in for like an hour of an entire walk. Like that is insane. It would be like taking a toddler out to like a candy store and expecting them to be looking up at you the whole time and not looking at any of the candy or wanting to interact with any of the fun shit that's around them. And that would be unreasonable because it's like expecting that level of focus is not necessary for the vast majority of dogs. But what I've realized is a lot of people with animals, their biggest pull to having animals is being able to control them and like feeling powerful and being able to make decisions. It's not about like actually providing an enriching and enjoyable life for the animal. It is about them being able to tell someone else what to do. Because like you can have a very obedient dog who is very well behaved but has a very shitty life, and the fact that they're obedient doesn't mean that they're living a fulfilled life. So that's something that I think people need to get less stuck on as a whole, where it's like our lives don't exist for us to just be obedient, complacent little workaholics who just like are constantly following conformity and like ruining our lives in the process. Because like let's be for fucking real here, no one wants to work until they're 60 and only get to retire with very little money like when they're already old and then finally start to get to enjoy life then. Like no one likes that. People just can't conceptualize an alternative to that, so they have bought the lie that that is the only way to live, when that is like so far from the truth. Like if we started just going after billionaires and being like, you know what, we shouldn't all, like the millions of us should not have to suffer on behalf of some dickhead like Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire. I do not give a fuck about any of these people who are like winning the pyramid scheme that is capitalism. I do not give a fuck about them getting their 60th house or their 100th yacht. Like I don't care. I would love to see them have to live like a everyday person, because they would feel like they're living in squalor and like they are being so hard done by, because they've gotten used to building a life that is reliant on taking advantage of other people. And I would love to see them suffer in the way that they are making other people suffer, because their very existence is reliant on suffering. And the ironic thing about our world is me saying that, a lot of people are like, wow, Shelby, that's so mean. Like, you're just as bad then if you say that. No, I'm not. I'm not fucking just as bad, because I'm not sitting on a hoard of gold like a fucking dragon, while I endorse the bombing of civilians in other countries and promote further poverty and division just so I can continue hoarding more wealth. Not the same thing. Being mad at someone who is objectively an abuser that is harming millions of people and wishing that they could feel the suffering they inflict on others and maybe learn something from it is not the same as being an abuser that is actively abusing people. And that's another thing in society that pisses me off, because I also get that with horses, where people are like, oh, well, you know, you saying that that form of horse training is cruel is actually really mean, and it hurts the feelings of the people who utilize that method. And it's like, I don't fucking care if I hurt their feelings. If they can't handle the discomfort of some chick on the internet saying something on her own platform they do not even have to look at, then they shouldn't be endorsing the discomfort that they inflict on horses in the name of training, because they are being little snowflake ass bitches who can't handle a fraction of what they're putting out into the world. And it's just very ironic. So that's kind of where I'm at in my life, and I've gotten increasingly more disenfranchised with the way things are going. And like I've become acutely aware of the fact that even as a business person, like you're more heavily rewarded by throwing ethics out the window and going, I don't care. You'll get more rewarded financially for doing so. If I hadn't changed my training program, and if I'd continued to chase the competitive lifestyle and like placate and enable a lot of the people who are promoting the bad parts of the horse world, I would have seen far more financial gain much quicker in doing so. If I was more willing to sell like training gadgets and like bridles with flashes on them and stuff that is about centering people who want to take shortcuts in horse training, I would have more sales. I wouldn't alienate a large portion of my fan base. If I didn't talk about politics on my platforms, I would have more customers because I wouldn't be making people as uncomfortable. And all of what I've done is like a decided effort to, one, be authentic, but two, to not let being a business person and trying to build a business let me turn into a complete fucking piece of shit who no longer cares about anyone else. Like, having a platform and being a professional should not mean that you don't have to show up for society and care about the community. And we've created this narrative that being a professional and building a business means never speaking out on anything that makes people uncomfortable, which is a load of fucking shit. It is mental gymnastics and gaslighting to get people to buy into the idea that this is why these people who are arguably in the best position to speak out on behalf of people who are suffering, this is why they shouldn't and why they don't do that. And it's basically self-enablement that is disguised as being professional and trying to show up in the most professional way. But if professionalism means forgetting about the importance of caring about people in your community, then like, why do we even want that? But it is true that it loses you money because you're more palatable and digestible if you're not saying those things. Like, I would also get a lot more sponsorships from companies if I wasn't alienating part of their target audience by saying things about the competitive show industry that people don't want to have to face and hear. Um, so it's a sacrifice, but it's also like, what would it really mean? Like, if I could have put together money to get this dream farm of mine sooner, but I had to sell out to do that, it wouldn't end up being the dream that I have because I wouldn't be the same person. I would have sold out and I would have gotten my what I want faster, but I would be a worse person for it. And I also would have had to let go of some important ideals in order to make it happen. And it's just really not worth it. And it kind of makes me think like about my uncle who embezzled all of our money and scammed a bunch of his clients. Like, he went to prison. You guys can look him up. His name's Mark Dennis. He went to prison, like white collar prison, so he basically got a slap on the wrist. But he embezzled over $5 million, and that's just the shit that he got caught for. And stuff like that. Like, I don't think he started that out being like, I'm going to scam all these people out of $5 million and not get it back to them. I think it started out with investing their money to create capital gains for himself so that he can basically skim off of the top of their investments. And then he overextended himself and ended up screwing everyone over in the process, along with himself to an extent. And he sold out and hurt a lot of people in the process. And then had sold out so heavily by that point that he didn't even apologize to anyone. He didn't even show any remorse. Still to this day, he's not apologized to my family. Even when my dad was in the ICU, he didn't show up. He didn't come to his funeral. He had like another opportunity to come in and be like, I'm so deeply sorry for like the pain that I had caused. And he chose not to take it. And it's like, that's when you choose to chase success at all costs and chase it quickly at all costs, you lose parts of your soul in the process. And he did that. And he's still like, he's had chances to make amends and he still hasn't. And I don't want to become someone like that. And he's been a reminder of the exact type of person that I do not want to be, because I cannot imagine being so committed to never admitting fault that I would choose to behave in the way that he did, even when my own sibling is dying in the hospital. And it's interesting because over the years, there's been times where I've been like, like, I'm sure that at some point he's going to apologize, but he never has. And it's really sad because growing up, like, we were really close with him and his family. And like, it also caused a falling out with me and my cousins, like his kids. And it wasn't their fault that their dad's a piece of shit. It's not their fault that their dad's a fucking con artist. But I also understand it's like, that's your dad. And it's really hard to accept the fact that like your dad chose to be a terrible person. So it does create discomfort because they see a different part of their dad than like what I did. But at the end of the day, it's like, I never want to be someone like that. That's not the type of business person I want to be. And it's also why like I've largely just like worked and burnt myself out, because I don't even want to hire employees unless I can offer them like competitive pay And also like for anyone, it's like if I'm getting them to like quit their current job to come work for me, I want to be established enough that I can guarantee long-term work. And it's also like risky for me. So a lot of the work I've just done myself because it's too much. And I'm hitting the point where it's like, okay, I really do need help because I can't scale or expand my business and do this all myself, or I'm going to like have a mentee be. But selling out just to try to get to your goals faster is so not worth it, because you can't, like, it's a death spiral that ends up with you becoming a worse person, because you get rewarded for taking those steps where it's like, okay, if you're willing to step on some toes, here's some more money. Oh, you're willing to overlook how your client's horse is actually not fully sound, and but they want to jump it. So you're going to find a vet that injects them full of corticosteroids in their joints, and now they appear sound, and now the horse is competing a meter 20, and your client is happy because the horse didn't have to rest. You didn't have to tell their horse isn't suitable for what they want. So now you're still getting paid. You get to retain that client, and you still get regular income from that. But now you're wearing a horse down to the point where eventually their joints aren't going to be able to function, and you're going to rob them of years of comfortable retirement simply so that the client can keep exploiting the body of that horse to chase their competitive dreams. So you get rewarded for it, and in order to try to reckon with the discomfort that is condoning something that is not okay, a lot of people go into denial and they'll double down and they'll defend what they're doing. And then this is where you get people who are so enraged by anything being questioned, by status quo being questioned, because if they are to admit that some of the criticisms hold any weight, even some of them, not all of them, it means looking back on all of these decisions they've made over time and having to sit with the guilt of that. And the deeper you get into that, the harder it becomes to accept. And then it's a spiral and you become a different person. And I honestly think it probably happens so slowly that you largely don't even notice it. Because it also goes into the fact that the reason why a lot of the people who have the most to gain by defending the current way the industry is run, if you look at how they go about defending it, it very, very seldom is through any type of empirical evidence. They very seldom ever actually target the arguments that are being posed by people who don't agree with the way things are being done. It is almost always about degrading people, personally attacking people, utilizing language that is often very privileged and elitist, and about shaming and othering people, rather than actually looking at what they're arguing. And the reason for that is because they cannot target the argument. They have to just try to degrade and bully people, which ironically is the same type of shit that they do to horses, just in a different way. So they perpetuate this cycle where they treat people in a similar way to how they treat horses. What I will also say, especially as stuff continues to come out, we're going to end up finding out more and more damning information about the cycle of abuse towards humans in the upper level horse industry, because I guarantee you there are a lot of cover-ups going on at the top levels of horse sports, because a lot of terrible people have money in the game and are being protected. And like with stuff like the Epstein files release, there's going to be stuff like that too, where there's going to be high profile people who are either actively involved in horse sports or are sponsoring them that are going to be involved in that type of shit too. Because the horse world is unique in that at the top level of sport, we have a very, very, very privileged, rich, and whitewashed sport. So you get a higher proportion of people that we see in the overall community supporting and engaging in certain mindsets that are also in the horse world. Like there's a lot of billionaires' children that are upper level athletes. And let me tell you, you cannot grow up as the child of a billionaire while having a realistic outlook on how the world functions. So all of those people are out to lunch, and their idea of what is and isn't fair is incredibly skewed. And you can go ahead and look up which billionaires' children are active in the horse world. I'll give you a hint. One of them got really fucking pissed at me years ago and did exactly what I said, degrading a person and attacking a person instead of the argument they posed, because he could not fucking believe that a peasant like me would dare criticize him and his horsemanship. And he tried to cut me down, but he came off very erratic and emotional, which LOL, men love calling women emotional. I'm pretty sure the video he responded to is still up. So y'all can check that out if you look up who the people I'm talking about, but there's several of them. There's a lot of billionaires' kids who go into horse sports. Also, horse sports are really good money laundering schemes because it's hard to prove for people that aren't actively involved in the horse world how much a horse is actually worth. And people can do cash payments on horses, and you can buy things for boarding facilities and barns and training stuff and then write it off as a business expense and launder fuck tons of money at the pinnacle of sport, because those horses are worth like six and seven figures, like especially the racing industry. I have my own guesses that I think, especially at lower level tracks, there's certain types of owners that will get really, really high caliber horses and run them against cheap horses who are not as nice, and basically have guaranteed wins most of the time. And if you bet on those horses, then you can launder money that way as well, and no one will know it's you. So like, I think that the level of corruption and money laundering that's going on in competitive horse sports is also a lot more than what people might like to admit. And it has a lot of ties to the other evils that we're seeing in broader society because of the type of people who are the most protected and most involved at the top levels of horse sport. And this is pretty specific to like English sports, because that's where I think we tend to see this degree of privilege in greatest extent, like horse racing, and then also show jumping, dressage, and eventing, like the Olympic level horse sports. It tends to be the worst there, but it also trickles down at all other levels, and it's all connected. And we're going to find out more about that eventually if society keeps changing. And there is a big shift happening in the horse world. And I think that people are getting more scared because they're starting to realize that the way that they have always believed things to be is not actually as accepted anymore. So they're getting more vitriolic, and they're lashing out more, and they're more upset by people criticizing things. And you can see that fear brewing. And they're trying to create weird false arguments to justify the way of doing things. One I've heard a lot is that people are like, oh, well, if we consider a horse's needs more and horse welfare starts to platform more, it'll only be a matter of time until all ownership of horses is banned. And it's like, bro, if it's between caring about horse welfare and applying evidence-based facts to what the standard of care and training is across modern horse sports and not owning horses, like if there is truly no in between, which there definitely is, because black and white arguments are a logical fallacy for a reason. They're creating a false dichotomy to try to make people feel like they have to pick a side when the truth is actually in the middle. But even if we were only offered those two options, if you actually love animals, then the easy answer should be, I would rather not condone the torture and mistreatment of horses. So if the only way around this is for us to stop owning horses, then like, yeah, I guess that's the route that we'll take. But fortunately, it's not like that. It's just fear mongering that makes people think any discussion of welfare is an attack on the entirety of the industry and horse ownership as a whole, which just isn't true. We're more likely to see the social license get lost and the horse industry collapse because of people's refusal to change, especially with the growing amount of research that is showing need for change. The longer people go on and ignore that and make excuses and refuse to change, the deeper of a hole they are digging for the industry. And eventually they're not able to climb out of that hole because people who are not as biased see the information for what it is, and they have no personal attachment to the horse industry, so they're not going to defend it. And that's the risk that we're running the longer time goes on and the more people refuse to change. And it's really frustrating because it's like, this would benefit everyone. Like if horse welfare was improved, you would see less injuries towards people. We would see happier horses. Horses would also probably be sounder and they would perform better. So in the long run, it literally benefits everybody. It's just that short-term thing where actually having to reflect and change the way they do things is so scary to some people that they'd rather push back and just completely ignore it. And it's very frustrating. So that's also why I've stepped back from the competitive world in such a big way, because like I can't think of anything I want to do less than be in a concentrated crowd of people like that. And obviously there are some fantastic people that compete, but the general attitude towards competition and like the pressures that it invokes are just not something that I want to be around. And it's something that I like even see from time to time on my channel with like the types of questions that I get asked about my horses, where it's like, when are you going to compete so and so? When are you jumping Banksy? When are you going to ride your Mustangs? Why aren't you riding them yet? And it's like, why is the fixation always on riding? Why can't people just enjoy their horses? Why can't people just enjoy doing groundwork with their horses? Why does there always have to be this perspective where you have to have a plan in place for when you're doing certain things under saddle? Why the fuck can't we just chill out? And like for me, it's not even just about the well-being of the horses. Like for myself, it's like I have been so burnt out for so many years and healing from it for so many years that it's like I have lost the drive to want to do those things, and I've lost a lot of the joy associated with it, and it's been very overwhelming. And right now I'm overwhelmed by other things like grieving and healing and whatever, right? So it's just not a priority. But I still get pressure put on me by people who don't understand like that doesn't always need to be a priority. And it's not a statement of lesser talent as a trainer to just not choose to prioritize those things right now. Because if I really wanted to, I could have both my Mustangs going under saddle by now because I've had the time to do so. But I just haven't had the drive and capacity to put time into doing those things. And riding is not a need. So yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like the fixation on riding horses as their sole determinant of worth is one of the evils in the industry that makes it so that people can't do what's right by their horses, because it's not just about riding them. Big stretch, baby. Big stretch. They have to have more worth than just as riding mounts. And I'm so distracted by like the toothpaste that's on my sweater. Such a bad ad for like my merch. It's like, hey guys, do you like my merch? I dribbled toothpaste or flour or something on it. They don't sell with the stain on it, but yeah. But yeah, like I think competition, like what Miriam's saying, is a lot of the like we could either change the venues to have more species appropriate care, or have like set venues in certain hubs where there's lots of people who compete, and you travel to those hubs and you compete there, and they have like the same dimensions and style of the arena, so that people have no like specific advantage. But it would reduce the travel, because like if we're being honest, like no horse wants to travel around the world. The fact that upper level show horses are flown from place to place or hauled long distance from place to place for so long, for so many shows per season, is not ethical. Like you cannot argue that that is in the best interest of the horse, because it's not. And that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's true. And it's also one of the reasons why I've gotten so pigeonholed in wanting to buy property and change the lifestyle that my horses are living, because there's a lot of things that I don't like about it that I don't think are aligned with my ethos. And one of those things is like, I would love to go on trail rides more, but the idea of having to haul my horses every time I want to trail ride them, and then like taking them on a longer ride, and then they're in the trailer for like 45 minutes to an hour to get home. One, it's more risky to them, because like if someone hits the trailer or something happens while we're driving, that's risky. Two, it's less enjoyable for them. And then it's also just like so many hours in the day that are just being taken up by traveling. And I don't like that. Like I want to be able to ride off my property, or have a property that I can go riding on and just enjoy that, and also have more control over the layout of the property and like what certain areas are used for, so I can really construct a place that aligns with what I'm most comfortable with. Because like I've improved my horses' lives over the years, and I've been more focused on providing species appropriate care, and like largely like as I've moved, it's been an improvement in some way or another for like what they have access to and the stability. But there's still things that like I can feel that for myself are missing, and that's not a criticism on anyone else. It's just for what I want to be able to provide, and I'm getting very, very tired of feeling so out of alignment and like out of control with really having things function the way that I would like them to, and really being able to put my heart and soul into a place. And it's also just one of the challenges that I had with renting, where like I look at it from the perspective of like, this is all just temporary, so what's the point? And like I didn't even used to put art up on the walls at my old places, which you can see is like changed. Wait, this is mirrored. It's changed now. But like that's largely just because someone mentioned to me like, well, what if you like practice decorating like how you would want to if the place is yours? But like I just desperately want a place that I can just put my heart and soul into creating and building a place and like have roots in and have stability. And like that is my primary goal, more so than anything, is just to finally find my place that's for me to exist. And like I don't feel like I've had that since a very, very long time. Like all throughout childhood, it's not been that way because like we had the rug pulled from under our feet and like lost everything thanks to Uncle Mark. Um, and it's been just a lot of ups and downs. And like that stability is something I crave, is just like having my own physical place that cannot get taken away from me like that. And that like I get to make decisions for, and where I don't always have to like outsource and ask permission before doing certain things. And that's something that's become very important to me. And like in the long run, like if that doesn't happen, like I think at some point I would stop owning horses, because like I don't think I want to keep having horses on places that aren't mine. But like in the short term, I kind of view it as like short term um, tolerance, or like having things be differently for the short term, while I try to put stuff into motion for the long term. And that's kind of where I'm at personally with trying to make all that stuff happen, is like this is just going to be what it's about for the short term. And in the long run, things are going to be different. But if it ever becomes clear that the long run is just not going to happen, then like I don't think I think I would end up taking space from the horse industry. But hopefully that doesn't happen, because obviously that's not what I want. Um, but it's just become important enough to me to be in control of factors surrounding like being able to walk the walk and talk the talk and do things how I want to. And like part of that has also influenced like my desire to train and work with horses, because I just really don't enjoy riding in the arena anymore. And I would rather go on trails and do stuff like that. And I have a hard time finding motivation to ride when that's like what the reality looks like for me right now. And I've kind of just been put into waiting mode, where I'm waiting to create the life that I want to live long term, and then start putting that stuff into action and having my motivation increase. And it's kind of finding a balance, because I can, in theory, do both, but I've just been so tired. And feel like I've just like every time I felt like I'm starting to get more ahead, like another shoe drops, and it's like another hard thing happens. Like this year, I was so excited for 2026. It's like my book's getting published, exciting things are happening. Like this book could change my life if it sells enough, and if it's meaningful to people and they really enjoy it, and it can set me up for success in the long run, where I am able to make changes in my life that otherwise felt um, inaccessible. And then it's like this year started off with my dad dying. So I was like, okay, like now I have like these goals that like I am still excited about. I'm still excited for my book to be published. It's like um, a little over a month away now. Like a month and 11 days is the US publishing date, which is really exciting. But this year started off with like another thing to deal with, where it just left me feeling like, oh my God, I can never, like, as soon as I feel like I'm starting to get ahead, like, I lose something else. And then that's also why I did that short today about, like, one of the aspects of healing is, like, as your life gets more stable in certain ways, just being, like, overcome with the fear of losing things as you're building a more stable life. And, like, one of my fears is not having my shit together enough to, like, get a property and really be able to set my mom up with like a good place to retire, and not be able to do all these things with her still in my life. And that's something I always obviously think about a lot more with my dad being gone, but it is something that I worried about before. So that's another thing, is like I want to be financially stable enough to be able to like actually really help people, starting with like people in my immediate life that are closest to me, but also broader society in a big way. And like I feel like right now it's like I'm not at a point of stability where I can even really do that, because I need to get myself, like it's like you got to put your own oxygen mask on first on the plane before helping someone else. And that's kind of where we're at now. But like that's one of the biggest things with becoming financially stable. It's not about being rich. It's about having the stability to create a life that is more material and less flimsy and less in other people's hands to control. And I think that's something that I don't necessarily always get across in my content, where it can make me just sound like a spoiled brat, where they're like, oh, you already have your horses on your property. Why are you so obsessed with buying a place? But it's about the fact that it's like I've had things that are important to me taken away from me, and have had people scam me and screw me and my family over. And like I do have a lack of trust for other people for sure. Like that is definitely a problem that I'm needing to navigate. But the biggest thing too is that like for me to really put my heart and soul into something, I want to feel like it's not as likely to get taken away, and I want it to feel like it's truly mine. And that's something that I really need to just curate through stabilizing my own life. So, anyways, I'm hoping the book will do that. And there's other stuff that I'm doing to try to stabilize my immediate life. Like I'm starting trauma therapy now to start really like unpacking the stuff that I've gone through over the years, because there's been so much of it and I haven't really had time to process all of it properly, because at the time I was just desperate to pull myself out of those situations and to do what I could to like create stability or set up my future so that I could escape that trauma one day. Which meant that there wasn't always a lot of time to like actually truly feel. So we're working on it, but that's basically where I'm at currently and processing stuff. And like I think one of the things with grief is that it's kind of like a kick in the pants to really align your life and to figure out shit that you've kind of been putting off and not necessarily been processing or thinking about enough, and thinking about how it's serving your future. So I guess that's like one thing that I'm a little bit grateful for. Um, is that I it's helping me to align things and hopefully will make stuff happen quicker now. But I have some stuff going on behind the scenes that I hope I'll be able to share more. Like I can share it to members only more, but I'm not posting it publicly because I don't want. There's some stuff that I just don't want people in my everyday life to know right now. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But thank you for listening to my rant about things, and hopefully that'll help people understand my content a little bit more, because I just want to share my story more authentically, and it's not about like it aligning with the most people. It's like people who are meant to see it and who it reaches and aligns with are welcome to stay and to find my channel, and that's great. And the people who aren't, they can go find someone else that they align with more. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like I'm not going to be censoring and hiding myself in the way that I have in previous years, because like I don't think it's served me in the way that I want. And you only really find the people that you're meant to like align with by being yourself and no longer masking. So that's what I'm about now. But anyways, thanks for watching. And as always, if you enjoy my content, like liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing really matters. I'm almost at 100K subscribers, so I'll try to do something cool for that, but I need ideas because like my brain is like running on dial up right now. Because I've just had a lot going on. So if anyone has suggestions for what I should do for that, feel free to comment on my community post. And yeah, let's try to manifest a farm this year, because I am really like I've hit a point where I've hit a wall like this before. Like the best comparative I have is back when I was like 14 and I was first like leaving the show barn. It was right after my uncle embezzled all of our money. And I had to move my horse from a show barn, which ended up being like a blessing in disguise because he got to go out on full turnout. And I actually had a lot of fun riding and doing stuff at the barn. So it was like an unexpected change that ended up being like the best thing. But prior to that, I had really lost my idea, like my will to like be around horses. And I was even considering like selling him and getting out of horses. And then moving barns like reinvigorated my life, my love for horses. Right now it's like I just feel like I've hit a wall and I'm feeling very unmotivated, and I'm lacking the capacity to really do things that I used to enjoy. And feeling really frustrated with the way a lot of things are, and just like out of control with things and not feeling stable, like just like a little bit unmoored, which is similar to how I felt then. And I'm hoping it's going to just be like where there's going to be some type of setting event that brings big positive changes that reinvigorate my life. So here's to hoping. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I'll see you all later. Bye bye.